Agutavach, this is Gemara Nazir Daf Mem. Apologies, we did not get this up before Shabbos. We'll try to get this up right away after Shabbos. And as always, with the Yom Tovim on the horizon, Purim, we will try our best to get multiple shiurim up tomorrow, Monday, so that everyone can prepare adequately for Purim. So we pick it up on the bottom of Lamites Amid Beis. We are holding 6 lines from the bottom. First word on the line is Be'asei v'loisa asei. We're in the middle of discussing the Isser of a Nazir to shave his head, and particularly with what instrument does this Isser apply, most notably Bitar with the razor. So we pick it up with Tanya Idach, 6 lines from the bottom, Lamites Amid Beis. Says the Braisa, Tar, the pasuk says with a razor, Ein li ela tar. So I know what is the Isser. The Isser is to use a tar, to use a razor, to shave a Nazir's head. Talash, mirei, tzif, kolshu. How do we know if one plucked the hair, if one removed the hair, if one picked the hair, with any amount, minayin, how do you know you're as well violating your term of Nazirus? Tamid loymar. Lo yaver al roishai. It says you shall not pass over his head. So therefore that includes all forms of hair removal, not only with a razor, but rather any other instrument, even removing it with one hand. So ask the Gemara 1 second. So once the Torah is going to say Lo Yaver Al Roishai, it's going to say that everything is forbidden. So Matam Eloy Tar Lo Yaver Al Roishai. So why does it have to say that you can't have a tar? If everything is included, why say tar? Says the Gemara, you know why? So the word tar over here in the general Isser of a Nazir is not being used for the general Isser. It's being used to teach us a different din. Tiglachas achroina, the final tiglachas, when a Nazir finishes his Nazirus, what's the halacha? He has to shave his head with what? Now we use the word tar to teach us that it has to be sheyiyeh bitar. It has to be with tar. And this is obvious. The interesting dichotomy that we find by Nazirus, of course, we're about to point out that we see this by Mitzayra as well, that on one hand, during the term of Nazirus, you can shave your head, and not with anything, even with a tar. When it's finished, you have to shave all your hair, and then, particularly with a tar. So now the Gemara says beautiful. So the word tar is used for tiglachas achroina. So now the Gemara explains, why do we need a special limud? You know why? Lilam daimi mitzayra ievsha. To learn out from mitzayra, meaning that just like a mitzayra has to shave his head with a tar, maybe that should as well teach us that a Nazir has to do the same. Says the Gemara, to learn out from mitzayra is impossible. As we turn over to Mem Amid Aleph, why? She'ein danin kal mechamer. Because you cannot learn something kal, which as we'll see in a moment is the halachas of Nazirus in reference to the halachas of Mitzayra. So you can't learn out Nazirus from Mitzayra. So Shein dan kal michamer lahachmer alav, to teach you that there's going to be a chomra by the kal, by the Nazirus. Therefore, that's what you can't learn out from Mitzayra. That's the Tanakama. Rabbi Yomer says, Rabbi Einay Tzarech, says Rabbi, no, we do not need the word atar to teach me that when you finish, you use a tar. You know why? Harei Yomer tar lo yaver al roishai ad milois. Because the pasuk itself says, Rabbi really hones in on this detail. Because it says you can use a tar when ad milois, until the conclusion, which teaches us HaTorah Omer Achar Milois Loitel Tiglachas Elo Bitar. So says Rebbe, it's not that the word is extra. The word tar is extra to teach us tiglachas achrayna. No, hagufa. From this pasuk particularly, we learn that the tiglachas achrayna should be with tar. Now this question again is a big difficult that the Gemara is about to ask. Says the Gemara, v'haksiv. I'm sorry, my screen just turned off. There it is. Says the Gemara, 1 second. V'haksiv tar le'aver al roshei. So the Gemara now is bothered. I don't understand. You just told me, Rebbe, that the word tar is not an extra. Why? Because it's particularly ad milois, but after the completion you need a tar. But says the Gemara, I don't understand. Rebbe, how do you get out of that which the Tanakhama said? What the Tanakhama said was so strong. It says, lo yaver al roshei. Nothing. Which of course includes a tar. So how can you, Rebbe, say that the word tar is not extra? Of course it's extra. Says the Gemara, very interesting. Laver alav mishnei lavim. Meaning, Rebbe agrees at some level it is extra. At some level, Ad Malais teaches me tiglach zachraynes bitar. Why? 2 things. 2 isurim. And that really wraps up the dinim of Nazir with regard to the tiglach zachrayna, with regard to the isser itself of being a tar. Now, 7 lines down, Mem Amud Aleph, Amar Rav Chisda, says Rav Chisda, let's delve deeper into the isser of a Nazir to cut the hair. Says the Rav Chisda, Lilkais, to get Malkus, Ba'achas. If a Nazir gets rid of 1 hair, La'akev, when in order to mess up, to hold back the upcoming shaving at the head of the Nazirus is Bishtayim, 2 hairs. Listar, let's take it backwards. If a Nazir shaves the majority of his hair, that goes back to our Mishnah from yesterday and the Nazirus is ended. You got to start again. When we're coming to shave the head, what's the halacha? You can't leave over even 2 hairs. And in general, if a Nazir gets rid of 1 hair, he gets malchus. Ubitar. And all of these halachas are with a tar. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Bitarin v'mida achrini lai. What do you mean? It's only bitar. It's only with a razor. Vaktani. But what happens to what we just learned? When the Rabbi says kol mavirin, we just learned that everything that removes is included to pick, to pluck, to remove. So why are you telling me dafka with a tar? Ela Ema, says the Gemara, you're right. Doesn't mean with the utensil of a tar, and this is an important definition in all the halachas of cutting hair, shaving hair. There's one utensil, a razor, a scissor, etc. Then there's the length of hair. Says the Gemara, al-ema ke'ein tar, meaning how much hair do you have to remove to be obligated? Ke'ein tar. What does it mean, ke'ein tar? Down to the root. Doesn't mean necessarily you're using a shaver. It could be a scissor. But if you cut the hair all the way at the root, then your scissor is not being utilized as a scissor. Your scissor is being utilized as a razor, and that's the reason. Just to give a derech agav halacha that could tie it together. When it comes to payas, you can't remove your payas. What do you mean? I used a scissor. Shkayach. But if you use a scissor cutting all the way down to your head, then you're using the scissor as a way of a tar. That is the isser. Says the Gemara, let's bring a riot to this day. Nazir talash mir tzivseis kol shu, picked, plucked, removed any hair. Eino yisaiser, does not destroy the nazirus. Ela beroiv roishai, with the majority of the hair you have to remove ubetar. And again over here the word tar doesn't mean with the tar itself, but rather what does it mean? It means the length of a tar. Rav Shimon Yehuda oimer misham Rav Shimon shem shtei sayrois ma'akvois. Just like if you leave over 2 hairs at the end of the nazirus, it holds back the shaving. Says Rav Shimon Yehuda, it's not if you shave the majority of the head, even if you just remove 2 hairs, that as well mess up your nazirus, and you have to start again. Says the Gemara, that's the end of part 2 of today's shir, which is what? All the different isurim and levels of isurim with hair removal. Now we continue Tanan Asam. We learned in a Mishnah. Shloisha megalchin v'tiglachas tiglachton mitzvah. Now we go big global. Now we tie together not just the din of tiglachas by a Nazir. There's 3 times in the Torah we have a din of shaving. Number 1 is Nazir, which of course we know it's our sigya. Number 2 is Mitzayra, as we've mentioned. And number 3 is Leviim. Is the halacha that a Levi, when a Levi is inaugurated to work in the Beis HaMikdash, they as well have to shave their head. Ve'kulan, and all of them, shegilchu shaloi betar, if they shave without a razor, o sheshayrush teisayrush, leave over 2 hairs, loss of leiklum, that when they shave, it has to be 100%. If you leave over 2 hairs, it's not called head being shaved. So 3 times that we have a din of tiglachas in the Torah. And all 3 times, tiglach mitzvah. Here the word mitzvah doesn't mean a positive commandment. It means tiglach mitzvah, that it's mandatory. If you don't do it, it is messed up. Amar Mar, says the Gemara, let's delve a bit deeper. Shloisha megalcha v'tiglach mitzvah. We're about 20 lines to the bottom. The first one line is shloisha. 3 people have to shave their head and it's mandatory. Pshita, says the Gemara. What's the chiddush? Obviously, if they have to do it, it's makif. Why do you have to tell me double? Number 1, they have to do it. Number 2, it's makif. Shkoyach. Answers the Gemara, you know why? Mishom. The reason is, Ma'udetem, I would think, Mishom avure saru, I would think that it's only to tell me that you have to remove the hair. Va'afilu sachnasa. And even if you use the hair removing agent, you didn't actually use a tar, you use some cream or whatnot to remove the hair, you would think that as well fulfills your mitzvah. Kamash malan delay. That's the chiddush. It has to be dafka with a razor. So, number 1, they got to remove the hair. Number 2, it has to be with a razor. Says the Gemara, Katani, the Mishnah, it said that if you don't do it with a tar, it's nothing. So, I understand. Nazir, it says tar. Clearly teaching me that a Nazir has to be with a razor. It says again, teaching me it's a razor. Where do we know that a mitzayra has to remove the hair with a tar? So now we're going to have the classical Gemara. We have 3 dinim, 2 have sources, and the big question is going to be, can I learn number 3 from those 2? Again, Nazir and Levi is explicit. Mitzayra is the Shiloh. So can I learn out Mitzayra from those 2? Says the Gemara, if you can tell me learn from Leviim, I'll tell you no. Navi, a Levi has to have the have shed. It has to have their, not shave, it has to have their head shaved. They tiglach on elbitar and is done with a razor. Afani aviyas amitzaira, learn amitzaira. Shutan tiglachas does have their head shaved. They tiglach on elbitar and has to be done with a razor. Says the Gemara, no, you know what I can ask you? Malavim, Shekain, Teunin, Tenufa. There was a special din by a Levi when they're inaugurated, they're waved. They picked up the Levi themselves and they shook the Levi like a lulav. So the special din of Tenufa by a Levi, Begufa with their body, Tamim Mitzayra, Deloy. And of course, this is the classical that you can learn out A from B if there's a Chumrah with one over the other. So once I see that a Levi is a special din, maybe I can learn out Mitzayra from it. Says Gemara, fine. 15 lines from the bottom. The first word of the line is Ella. Ella Tesi min Nazir. Again, what should we learn from Nazir? Ma'ale Nazir shekin karbanai. Tol and lechem, you have to bring bread. Taimi mitzayra delay. I have a problem. Mitzayra doesn't need bread. So says the Gemara, Ella mechad alay aisya. I can't learn out the din of a tar of a razor from Mitzayra. By Mitzayra from either Levi or Nazir, because each one has something special. Levi has tenufa. Nazir has lachem. So says the Gemara, Tesi mitarvayin. Let's learn it from both. May Tesi from what? Tesi mi Leviim. Let's learn it from Leviim. Ma Leviim shkein ta'an tenufa begufa, and they need to wave their body. So Nazir doesn't have to have their body waved. They still need to be done with a razor. V'chazar adin larizekri zev larizekri zeh. Atzaratzav shabed shein tenufa shein tenuinin teglachas v'teglachton betar. It has to be done with a razor. Afani obvious amitzayir shutun teglachas v'teglachton betar. So says the Gemara, we shall learn out mitzayram. I think I skipped a line. Let's just go back up again. One more time. Mehei Tesi Milaviyim, Malavin Shkein Tan Denufa, Begufan, Nazir Chech, Mal, Nazir Shkein Tan Shkein Karban Tan Lechem, Leviyim Yechichu, V'Chazer Adin, Larizek Rizav, Larizek Rizaz, Hadashav Shaban, Sheitunum Tlach, V'Tiglach Betar, Afani, Avi Semizar Shatan Tiglach, Az V'Tiglach Tan Betar. So says the Gemara, that should be the source that we start out from both Nazir and Levi. Amale Rava mi Barnish Ravashi. Rava from Barnish says to Ravashi on the last line of Mem Amid Aleph, 1 second. Ve'lifraich, and I'll ask you the following kasha. Maletzara Shava Sheben. The two things you're learning from Nazir and Levi, that common denominator has something, Shekain ein karbonoi bidalus. As we turn over to Mem Amid Beis, both Nazir and Levi has a chumrah that there's no such thing as a carbon being brought as a dalus, as a form of poverty. The chiyuv of the carbon by a Nazir and the Levi is absolute. It does not vary as to the bracket of wealth that the Levi and the Nazir has. Whereas, Timer Mitzayir on the top line of Mem Beis, Shar Karbanai Bedalos, the carbon varies depending on the amount of money that the Mitzayir has. So maybe you can learn now Mitzayir from Levi and Nazir. So Amrle Rava Bar Meshisha Rava. So Rava Bar Meshisha says to Rava, Hi Tana, 1 second. Rava Bar Meshisha zooms out and says something doesn't make sense here. Hi Tana Meikara. This Tana in the beginning, Amar Lelamdei Mitzayir Yevshar. If you remember, as we turned over to Mem Amid Aleph, he said, you certainly can learn from Mitzayir. Why not? Because Nazir, you can learn from Mitzayir. Lahachmir Alav. V'hadar Amar, and now you're flipping the table and saying Neilav Medina. Medina Namid Alav, and you're not even letting that happen. So says Rav, I don't understand what's going on over here. So Amar Lei, so Rav responds, Ahu Aliba Dirabanan. Now we get to the bottom of the sugya. What exactly is going on with the din of the tar by a mitzayra? We have an overarching machlekes Rabbanon and Rav Eliezer. De Tenan, 8 lines down. Mem Amid Beis. The first one in line is Dir Rav Eliezer, and as you see, this is going to be a sugya that is going to bring us already into tomorrow's daf. Titanan, as we learned in our Mishnah, says the Tanakama, the Isser of cutting off in general the corners of one head, like we reference on Amud Aleph, is only bitar. Rav Eliezer Omer, I feel likta b'makle b'ritani. Says Rav Eliezer, no. Even if you cut it with any form of cutting implement, a plane, chayiv, you're obligated. So my time ayu de Rabbanan. So let's understand, where did the Rabbanan get this din, the din of loisashchis as peyas zikanecha, that you can't destroy your peyas? Where did the Rabbanan learn out that it's only bitar? Ditan, you learned in a brayso. Zikanoi matam aloymar. Why does the Torah say zikanoi by a mitzayra? It says to shave his beard. Because the Paul says upas zikanom lo yigalchu. We have a general isser to cut off the corners of one's beard. I would think maybe the same thing applies to mitzayra, that when a mitzayra has to shave his head at the end of their tzaras, maybe it includes you can't shave the beard, the corners of the head. So says the Torah, no, bidafka you have to shave zikanoi. So says the Gemara, umenalim bitar. Fine. So we see that by a mitzayra they're allowed to shave the corners of their beard. But how do you know it's with a tar? Titania pasikanom who says the brayso, the corners of the face you shall not cut off. Yachal, I would think, afilu gelcha b'misparayim yechayiv. You would think that even if it's done with a scissor, you're obligated, that it's part of the isser. Talmud loymar, no. V'lo yisashchis. So therefore the pasuk says lo yisashchis, you should not destroy. So yachal likta b'miklat v'ratani yechayiv. So you would think that the Isser should apply even with any form of cutting implement. Says the Torah, no, you cannot shave. So what does the Torah mean that on one hand it refers to as Yigalechu, on the other hand it refers to as Loy sashchis, to destroy. Ezeu giluach sheyesh by hashchasa. What is shaving that has destruction? This is, as we mentioned earlier today, what is a form of cutting, which goes all the way to the root. It's a form of hashchasa, destroying the root. Haveyoymar zetar. So that's what we know. It has to be done betar. But the Gemara is not finished yet. So says the Gemara, but mimai, how do you know that this is a chiyuv? Maybe when the Mitzayra finishes, you could cut it with anything. And you know what the chiddush is? But how do you know that there's a positive obligation to use the tar? Maybe you're just allowed. So Amri, and with this we conclude, if you would think you could also be fulfilling your obligation with any form of cutting instrument, the Torah should have been quiet, and I would know. Nazir, by a Nazir, you're doing an Isser and afilu achi mechayiv. And even though it's an Isser, by what's an Isser? The Etzem Nizirus is an Isser. And yet, what is the halacha? When you have to shave your head, you do it with tar, even though normally it's aser. Hacha de mitzvah like koshkein. Over here by mitzvah, it's a mitzvah. So certainly, it should be allowed. And that's what says the Gemara. We know that it's going to be an absolute chiyuv. Now, the Gemara is going to continue in the Shita of the Rabbanan, but it goes all the way into Amud Beis. So again, tomorrow we'll get a running start with the first half of the Rabbanan. We'll go on to tomorrow's Daf Yomi, and then ultimately we'll get into the Shita of Rav Eliezer.